in West Africa, Togo has been holding its delayed parliamentary and regional elections today. Political tensions are high over recent constitutional changes that the opposition has criticized as an attempt to solidify President Gnassingbé's political position. It replaced the presidential system with a parliamentary one. Opponents say that this could allow Mr. Gnassingbé to extend his family's decades-long grip on power, as the president will now be selected by parliament rather than being directly elected. Mr. Gnassingbé has been president of Togo for 2 decades. He succeeded his father, who was in power for almost 4 decades. Recently, the government cracked down on the opposition and postponed the election for 9 days. It also imposed restrictions on the media and stopped issuing accreditation to foreign journalists 2 weeks ago.
We've always wanted change. That's why we voted. And we hope for that change.
I voted, and I did so because I have high hopes for the development and peace of the country. It's crucial for the elected officials to focus on these aspects.
I
was a bit surprised when I entered the polling center to find that the courtyard wasn't as crowded as usual. However, inside the voting booth where I cast my ballot, there was still a small line. Elsewhere, I don't sense much enthusiasm, which is somewhat concerning to me.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by Professor Esan, who's a professor of international relations with a focus on the history of African elections and democratic developments on the continent and beyond. Prof, thank you very much indeed for joining us. More than 4 million people registered to vote in today's ballot. They're electing 113 lawmakers as well as other regional offices. Give us the background to these elections briefly.
It's very interesting, actually. For the past few months, there have been talks about Faure Gnassingbé trying to prolong his stay in power beyond the extended 1 term, which is, constitutionally entitled to. And of course, that is not just the story. The story goes far beyond that. Far back to 1967, when the father, Eyadema Gnassingbé, took over the reins of power in Togo. And it was there from January 1967 to February 2005. It's a very fairly long time.
Yeah.
And of course, the constitution provided that, look, if the president were to die in office, he died in office actually, then the head of the parliament was to take over the reins of government for 60 days. Through that period, in between that period, new elections can be conducted, and when, of course, the military in Togo supported the Gnassingbé family, and of course, Faure became the president in 2005 on the basis of 5-year term each. So he has been there, completing his fourth 5-year term in next year, 2025. So this is the background to the story.
Right.
So for a long time, for about 3 generations of Togolese, I've never known any other name. I've never heard of any other name in practical terms than the Eyadema family.
That sounds utterly depressing, and that is arguably why the recent constitutional changes have been so controversial. We know that recently the country changed from a presidential to a parliamentary system of government, and under this new system, the parliament will elect a new president instead of a direct vote by the people. And this has led to protests, hasn't it? The feeling seems to be that it's an attempt to extend President Gnassingbé's time in office.
Yeah. It is very interesting. It's bittersweet kind of thing, because if there is truly a democratic election and it is free, fair, and credible, then there is every chance that, okay, the opposition might take over the parliament and produce the first prime minister, super president, as people say it, and took over from Faure Gnassingbé. But as it were, so many things are at play. For example, the opposition are divided among themselves. They are very weak, you understand, in a country, a relatively small country dominated by the Yadema family, and particularly by the Union of the Republic, UNR, the party in power. So the submission is that, look, this election held today or holding today essentially will produce the majority favoring the president in power.
So that is almost like a foregone conclusion, because
It's
I was going
almost,
to ask you,
yeah,
what is the likely outcome of this parliamentary election? Is it an uncertain moment? Because, I mean, there are at least 5 main opposition parties that are ostensibly taking part.
Yeah. For example, we have the Alliance for the Forces of Change, Alliance for National Change and all that, ANR and ANC, and those are very strong parties, literally strong parties. One of them headed by Olympio, Silvano's son, you understand, the son of the first president who died in 1963. So it's relatively strong, but I can say relatively strong on paper. So let's watch out and see the outcome of the election. Let's not preempt it.
Right, but I mean, you hear a lot of things about these elections.
Yeah.
You sort of keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
What have you been hearing about the expectations of the conduct of the elections and whether it is likely to be a credible ballot? Because I guess the reason it became a parliamentary system is that the president's party controls parliament.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that respect, it will be credible, but
Yeah.
it'll favor him in that credibility.
In the parliament, 87% of the parliamentarians belong to the president.
Right. So
Union
that
of
answers the
Republic,
question.
You understand? 87% belong to the Union of the Republic. Yangzingbe's foray, Yangzingbe's Yadema's party. So that means that the opposition, they are up against a very, very big structure. You understand? And they need a miracle to actually overcome, as it were.
Well, in that respect, I'm a little bit surprised that I heard about the government cracking down on the opposition when it has such dominance. I guess it's cracking down because they're opposing the constitutional reforms.
Yeah.
But I also understand that restrictions have been imposed on the media in recent days. In fact, the Togolese authorities stopped issuing accreditation to foreign media 2 weeks ago who wanted to cover these elections. I mean, these restrictions appear to be quite worrying.
Of course, it's worrisome. The Council of Togolese Bishops were restrained from monitoring the elections. They actually applied to be an observer, you understand? In this election, they were restrained and said, look, they were denied the accreditation by the body, that is supposed to give them the accreditation. And not only that, some groups were actually literally curtailed.
But you have to wonder why they're doing that, if they're confident of a victory.
Of course, that is normal, Why would they even talk about, seamless, what do you mean, termless position for a president if you are not worried about, if you feel very secure and you are sure of what is going on and you are totally in control and you are sure of the democratic structure you have put in place. So it's a little bit complex, but one thing is sure, whatever the outcome of the election is, you understand, will be beginning of a phase for the Togolese, That's it, and it's going to be very, 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 very important for them. You understand? Because Togo is a very worrisome situation, case. For a long time, like we said, since 1967, that country has never known any other name. 1967 today is almost 60 years. You understand? They have never, the only name they know, the only ruler they know, making 57 years of rulership of the Rasingbe Eyadema family means that they are the longest ruling, you understand, family in Africa. Understand? Longer than the man, in Cameroon. You get what I'm saying? In sub-Saharan Africa, they are the longest ruling. So it's worrisome, and that is why a lot of people are raising, eyebrows and say, well, what's going on in Togo? Some of us who are a little bit informed about the history of Togo will naturally be asking questions. So that's what's going on.
Prof, thank
Yeah.
you very much indeed. And
Yeah.
we'll keep an eye on what's going on there in Togo. Professor Tunde Esan is a professor of international relations with a focus on the history of African elections and democratic developments on the continent and beyond. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.